long background in AI, both in academia. I started several companies. I don't know much about architecture, but I've always had a passion, and my closest connection now is working with Arkdesign on their AI. And John, who will introduce himself, is, in addition to being a research leader at Autodesk, is also an accomplished architect. And so he very much straddles the architecture and technology sort of landscape.
Thank you, Yoav, for that that intro. I'm really glad that you actually demonstrated the breadth and scope of what constitutes AI. I think we're living in a world right now where AI is being defined by Chat GPT. I think that took over really fast, probably unexpected, even by OpenAI, that it would, permeate culture so rapidly. And I think it's given us in the architecture field this vision of a one-click, one sentence, throwing that into the cloud, and you magically create this kind of building design. You send it off to a robot to build it, and then it just kind of like somehow appears on site. But I think that, what I think is really powerful and what Yoav is showing is that understanding more of the details, what he described, taking ownership over some of that could actually empower architects, empower us on this call, to know how these tools work, to understand them, and really to build the future that we want to see. So I think it's really important to have that foundation. Yeah, and a lot of thanks to Didi and Sarah for the invite, and thank you all for joining today. Yeah, hello, my name is John. Let's see, I started my career in traditional architectural practice, but for the last 10 years or so, I've been a research scientist with Autodesk. My passion is around developing new software workflows for design, specifically around sustainability and carbon accounting.
Those are underutilized, and so it's really refreshing to see you use them. And maybe you can speculate on. So right now you have the thing you called MKG, Material Knowledge Graph. Can you say how I know it's early days, but can you say a
Yeah.
little bit how you see it expanding both within the material world and maybe other knowledge graphs in AEC that aren't specifically on materials?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's a great question, because I think it gets to the heart of what what is our vision for the future of AEC? What is, like, getting away from the kind of like construction management vision that's been there for 50 years of like building a building, tearing a building down, sending that waste to a landfill. These kind of material knowledge graphs give us, and where I'm going with the bill of materials is we actually envision a kind of full material life cycle circularity approach to the way we think about buildings, right? So we're already going from, like, we went to cradle to grave to now cradle to cradle. But there are other ways to semantically understand what exists in the real world. And maybe, sorry, I'm kind of like nibbling at your question from a few different sides, but I think maybe to more directly answer your question is, I think we're interested in knowledge graphs now for existing material or existing buildings, basically. So if you could start to think understanding everything around us in our space, understanding not only what's visible, but what's invisible too. And what I was trying to get at with the knowledge graphs and combining multimodal data, having little pieces of material, but combining it, being able to make inferences. So just to give a really quick example, let's say we had existing building, and we had an RGB sensor that could see drywall. That's pretty easy with like a machine learning identification to see, like, it's a white plaster wall, it's probably drywall. You could add a thermal sensor to that and start to see studs behind the wall. You could actually, like, it would be visible. That camera would then identify like a stud, it would identify the placement, and then it could start to tell you like how many studs are based on the size of the room. And you could start to like expand that idea of a bill of materials, and have a holistic view of not only like what the existing materials are, but how the existing materials could be reused, what the value is. Yeah, so you could start to have a way to use knowledge graphs to understand the value, the use, the performance, not only new assemblies, but existing assemblies within the assets that you already own. And I think that drives us toward a more kind of circular, holistic approach to reusing materials, reusing existing materials. So yeah, thanks. I think, you know, your background, Yoav, is so exciting to me, because so often I feel like there's a division between practitioners in the AC industry and those in the computer science world who are, you know, earning Nobel Prizes, building these things. I mean, when we started a lot of our work, we were looking at kind of like analogies to protein folding, to AI for crystal, you know, exploration. So I'd ask maybe you, what do you think, like, architects, those of us on the call, what should we be kind of learning about? How should we be engaging with the science behind some of this? What would you recommend where we start?
It's a big question. I'll pick one angle of it,
Yeah.
which is different requirements in professional enterprise setting, such as architectural firms, construction firms, project management firms, versus consumer adoption of AI. And what you see in the enterprise in general, not just in AC, is that while there's a lot of interest, there's a big drop-off from prototypes, experiments to deployment. There's one study that shows that only 6% of projects get deployed. And there's several reasons for this, but the biggest reason is something you touched on when you spoke about the need for knowledge graph. And that's lack of reliability, predictability, controllability, transparent understandability. That's a key. If you're brilliant 95% of the time, but not only wrong, but total garbage 5% of the time, you can't work with that. You can't deliver a project to your customer that with 5% probability total garbage. And plus, you don't know whether it is or isn't. So this issue of reliability and transparency is key. And I think the one thing to realize is that in the professional setting, LLMs, as sexy and powerful and really brilliant as they can be, are not sufficient. I've not seen a single case where a customer took an LLM, sent some prompt at it, and delivered the answer. You need to wrap around it a whole bunch of stuff. And so people speak now about orchestration and complete AI systems. And that's really where the world is going. So I think doing a quick prototype with an LLM-centric thing, like, if people know a React framework or something like that, is fine. I'll give you a quick feel and maybe a dopamine hit. But you really need to architect something that's scalable. There's also controlling for the cost when you deploy it. So that's the main thing, I think, when you think about the people looking at the science and thinking about what can I really do in the real world, that's something to keep in mind. But maybe we should look at some of the questions from the participants.
Yeah.
Um,
It's to say you're absolutely right. Nobody wants to drive over a bridge that's been like, you know, structurally designed by a hallucinating AI. So it is about, like, for me, it's about the collaboration and the trust and the, like, you know, that's what I like so much about generative design. I can see my results based on what I put in. It's totally transparent. It's not going to work if it's like a black box and I don't know what, I don't know where this came from. I don't know, like, is this a hallucination or is this real? So, yeah, I like where you're going though with the data source and the trust. I think it's a huge issue. It's a huge topic, and it's important. Weaviate is using kind of OpenAI for kind of vector database. But other strategies, just really quick, we believe in fine-tuning existing LLMs, kind of adding to it, not really building our own. Maybe that answers your question. Taking
And for us,
out there, yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
And for us, it's similar, but maybe a little different. First of all, we have, since LLMs are very expensive to run, they're quadratic complexity. So as the context window, the input size grows, the computational costs and the memory requirements and the latency grows quadratically in that. And now when we had context window of 1,000 word or tokens, 1,000 squared is fine, but we're not pushing a million, and a million squared isn't fine. So we actually have a different architecture called Jamba, which is a mixture of what's called state-space model and the transformer, which is much more efficient. So that's our go-to model. But in so when we speak about RAG, this is beginning to inch towards an AI system because the LLM isn't doing all the work. You're going to an external source, whether it's the web or proprietary database, your documents, and you need to do retrieval, and you need to, based on that retrieval, generate content. And so there's a whole workflow here. And here we have, there's a whole optimization of this workflow that we use.
Yeah, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. If I'm up here like saying that, we're gonna make better sustainable choices by using AI, and every time you hit enter, you're burning off a square kilometer of like Arctic ice. That's probably not a really good strategy for the future. I would say, I probably don't have like a satisfying answer for this because it's something that I think we're all kind of struggling with right now. But I would say there's kind of two ways to approach this. Is the value prop for what you gain greater than what you lose? I think it's on people that develop the tools to demonstrate that, and be really open and show that that's true. The second is something I've been thinking about a little bit, which is, what is the kind of power source? Where is power generated from? What is the source? What are AI servers are one of like the biggest growing typologies. I'm sure we've all like queried calls. I get a lot of those, like how can we use AI to better, design a AI server space, cool it with like ocean water, cool it with it, so that's another way to tackle it. Where is the energy to power an AI coming from? Is there a way to address that at the source? So I think it's a little bit of like, what is the source and what is the outcome, and how do we demonstrate value? But it's an important topic.
I think so. I can't speak specifically about the AEC food chain and how, the appetite for expenditure or experimentation there. And maybe John can speak about that, but I can tell you what I see and we work in multiple industries. And without exception, I see the following pattern. So it leads me to think that something similar would be in AEC. You have a champion. You have somebody who sees an opportunity, and they would either go and to prototype it, but it has to be something very specific where you see the value or the potential value. And then you'll do a relatively small, I'll give you an example. This is public knowledge, so I'm speaking about it. There's a big retailer called Fnac. Again, not AEC domain, but I think the lessons are similar. And they have the following problem. They have in their online retail thousands of products coming online all the time. And you need to describe these products in words. And that's labor intensive, time-consuming, expensive, and so they wanted AI to generate product descriptions. But you want them to be accurate. And so they worked with us on a small scale, a small number of products behind, firewall, didn't deploy, and got comfort. In fact, optimized. Like I said, you never out of the box get the right solution. You get close, but then you see what you need to tweak, and you tweak it, and then you go and work, in that case, with several 10,000s of examples. And at this point, you have enough robust statistics and you get comfort too, and you pull the trigger, and now you go online and the descriptions are powered. So I would think that a similar dynamic would take place in architecture. But John, what's your take on this?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's really well said. Maybe, I'm luckily I don't have to, not in the world of like selling software. But maybe I was kind of in the trenches during the kind of transition from CAD to Revit. And I think, I think Didi, you kind of had this as a provocative statement at the start. It was like, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it was maybe, not all architects have to use AI, but the ones that do might outpace the ones that don't, something along those lines. So in a way, I'm not trying to kind of play up the competitive nature of our field, but I think it's, by design, we would, the architecture field would is always striving for new opportunities to deliver better buildings. If your maybe niche is in that and it can help you do what you want to do, but in a faster, more efficient, more higher performing way. I think it's important. I think it's important not to just go for more efficiency, more, wringing out more with less, but really like, can you deliver a better building through the tool? And I guess I land on the idea of this is a tool. And if you're a designer who's looking for more tools to do what you want to do, then you have to demonstrate the value, kind of, you demonstrate the value of the tool, whatever that tool is, whether it's BIM or AI, it's something that you need to do your job better. Yeah. I would like to ask you the question that I always get. It's a pretty common question. Is AI going to replace the architect? What do you think?
Well, I really believe the thing that sounds like cliche that you mentioned earlier. Um, Look, let's think by analogy. I think certain aspects are certainly being automated. If you think by analogy about writing, we used to have copy editor. I'm old enough to remember that. Our word processor is doing the copy editing for us. We don't need spell checking, grammar checking. That's automated. But we still need editors in the sense that the smart people, if it's a journal or a book we're writing, or to look over and give us higher level advice. So we still need those. So aspects of the profession are automated, not all of them. And even those that aren't automated are aided by new tools that didn't exist before. So I think and again, not speaking about knowing too much about architecture, but loving the profession. Um, and I've worked with architects. Um, I think, and again, well, you'll see it in Arkdesign, but what the tools can do is present opportunity, many more opportunities that unaided you would have stumbled on. So they're amazing companions, research assistants, and so, but at the end of the day, the final product you want is so nuanced in its requirements that I really think you need the insights of a talented architect, but now aided by this new AI assistant. I think that's where we're going.
If AI vets a design and there's an issue with performance, who or what is on the hook professionally? And I think that's kind of what you're getting at, that there's always going to be the role of, I mean, this question is more aligned with kind of like liability. But I think what you're getting at is kind of like bigger about the creativity or the kind of nuances in design.
I mean, you're right. I mean, there's liability. There's this, and the flip side of this IP rights. If
Yeah.
AI designed an amazing new kind of building, who owns the right to that invention? I honestly think that we are in new territory that we're beginning. We, meaning we as a society, are grappling with. Um, I think at the end of the day, um, whoever is providing a product or service is responsible. And if they used a tool that led them to provide you with a defective product, they're on the hook. But then they may and go and say, well, it's, AI21 or Anthropic or OpenAI gave me a defective one and complain to them, or which is a polite way of saying suing them. Um, so, where the contribution is on the one hand, the blame lies on the other along this supply chain, I think it's new territory.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes me, if you kind of really go line by line through your terms of service of any like structural simulation solver, there's clear language that's like, the maker of this algorithm to solve, Tekla, whatever. Um, this is just like a tool to aid you. This is not like, don't build this design that comes out of like the screen. There's still a structural engineer, PE, who's going to sign that, and they're going to take on the professional liability. So it it conflicts with kind of where I see, and the conflict for me is that in a way, I want there to be more architects because there are people that have ideas, design background who might be limited through, I mean, I don't know, like through whatever means, not able to achieve that professionally, but could still be really strong architects with the aid of kind of like a co-pilot or like an assistant. So what does that do for professional liability if you're not like a legally I don't know. It is kind of like new territory, and it's are we doing all this work just to get back to where we already are, or are we like fundamentally altering the profession, which has other kind of ramifications and could be more yeah, threatening in a way. But I don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. You live at this unique situation where you understand architecture in a deep way, but you also understand technology well. And so when you work with a technologist like me, what do you wish we knew that we didn't know about architecture so we can give you a better product and better service?
Yeah. um that hits really close to home since I'm kind of I gotta be careful with what I say because that's kind of like something I deal with a lot lately. But I'm continually struck by your approach, Yoav, as somebody who is so familiar with the technical and software side, and your approach to the AEC world, which is, I think, more generous and inquisitive and open to learning. And I guess I would say that I think it's kind of like I would prefer a world where the boundaries are always blurred. We all kind of like, jump to different feel. An architect is not only design buildings, you have to know so much about behavior, comfort, design, like it's not just technology versus design. It's so many like, and I think that multi-scalar, multidisciplinary approach to architects is why it's such a powerful profession. But maybe to your specific question, I think it's kind of like, coming at it with mutual respect and admiration and being like that there's openness to learn from all sides. And just because one thing might work in the software world, or that you're able to, create an LLM, doesn't necessarily mean that you're able to like design a building. And I think the way you talked about the nuance and, your kind of openness and eagerness to, I think all of us to learn from each other, that really points the way to a future that is much more, resonant with me versus like just kind of taking and, saying that my way is the best way, but actually learning from each other, I think is the way we have to go.